Howdy, all of you delicious people. I'm here today to review Barbarian 2022. Not to be confused with another movie called Barbarians, which is a completely different film. Like two couples end up getting tied up and taped and forced to like confess certain things, and then like the couple ends up trying to figure out a way to survive their night. After it seems they find out who um, their kind of villains are in that story. So, anyways, how did I feel about Barbarian? What is this movie about? Let's get into it. So, Barbarian, the positive side of this film. Justin Long's character, AJ, is probably the best thing about this film, but that is obviously by default. It seems that for Justin Long's character, AJ, they give us a lot more time to marinate on this character before they put him to the place where it seems that everyone else is going in this film, and then have his journey go the way that it does. So, if that's the best part of this film, now the downside. The downside, of course, is it feels like a good portion of this film, possibly about 50, 60% of this film, is done in the dark, to where you can't exactly always tell what's going on at certain points. And it really did not benefit me for the fact that I had to forcibly watch like a bootleg version of this film, and I was like, what's going on at certain points? But like, I think the movie was to just be like, hey, like, we're just doing this, and we'll see if anybody's gonna really watch this kind of film. Because here is what happens in Barbarian. So we go on and we have a number of characters that are all to make their way to some B&B that is to consistently send people that already have someone already living in this B&B. And so the more and more we start to have these people collectively come in here, we go on and have every single one of these characters at some point find out in the basement that there is some secret door that they are to, instead of just deciding, yeah, I'm gonna get the F out of here, instead they just grow curiosity and they're like, man, I gotta go on and investigate this because evidently I have nothing better to do, and I just want to risk my life doing this because why not? It sounds great. So, we have our characters here eventually walk down to these flight of stairs to find the secret room, but then further they realize that there's a whole other secret door that leads further down these tunnels, to at some point end up having them find this couple that has much more become these caveman-like characters. We of course have this this guy who is named Frank, who is just in this bed desperately wanting water, and we have this mother who is to treat everyone that comes down there as if they are her babies, that she needs to give them a massive bottle to feed them, and if they refuse to not be fed by this bottle, the mother ends up taking them into this room while watching this video and force feeding them with her own chest, with her own let's just say it, she ends up breastfeeding a person forcefully, and that ends up coming out to be, I'm like, man, this movie is taking some weird turns some weird twists. But come to find out, this mother character seems to become unstoppable, to where we have at some point where characters are like, hey, I'm going to try to get the out of here. And the further and further they try to get away from this woman, while this woman has diddly worth of clothes on, the further and further they make it away from that house, the more the mother is to now latch on to these characters as if she is to need to desperately find her child and go after them and hunt them down. And if she's not going to go on and like get these children and protect them, she's going to kill them, as well as a number of people are all trying to defend themselves from this mother that they're like, no. So with that said, I think it's about that time to just go on into that double 5-time territory. The grading of this movie is kind of straightforward. This movie was straight up bad. Straight up bad. I was like, this movie honestly should be just one of those movies that you're like casually watching in the background, not going to a theater to see, not actually spending money to actually see it. Like, you'd be better off waiting till this comes on some Hulu or some streaming service somewhere for you to check out conveniently at whatever point, because it's not a rush to see, because there isn't enough story to justify needing to go to a theater and see it. It just isn't not that way. Kind of reminds me of X. With just the way it like approaches itself. I'm like, okay, this is very weird and goofy. So let's go on and let's double 5 this bad boy up. It's about that time. Let's just go into spoiler time. It's about that time. I guess and spoil this movie. So let's go into it. So in the beginning of this movie, we have a girl named Tess who is to make her way to this B&B. She's putting in this code to try to get this key out, and it's not working. So Tess is to go on and try and call these people to be like, hey, the key's not there. What's going on? So Tess is knocking on this door thinking that the previous like owners or whatever, the owners of this B&B are to be there waiting for Tess, and come to find out instead it's a guy named Keith. And Tess is like, hey, like, what are you doing here? And Keith is like, well, like, I paid for this night. And Tess is like, oh no. Like, Tess is to go on and mention that she, of course, was to pay, and, like, we have Tess is like, well, like, not to be skeptical about all this, but, like, do you have, like, an invoice or receipt or something? And so Keith is to show that, yeah, like, I did pay for this time here, and Tess is like, okay then. So, like, this is just some mistake. So Tess is thinking, it's like, well, I'm just going to go on and I'll find a hotel. Like, I'm sorry that I've ruined your night. And Keith is just like, well, like, when really thinking about it, you're probably not going to go on and be able to find any rooms, because I think there's, like, some kind of convention or something going on in town. So Keith ends up going on and telling Tess, it's like, well, hey, like, how about tonight you get the bed and I'll get the couch? And Tess is just like, no, like, I can get the couch. And Keith is just like, no, like, I'm a gentleman and I couldn't stand if a woman is on this couch sleeping away, and I'm sitting in this bed, like, I won't be able to sleep the night. So Tess is like, well, that's great and all, but, like, I have a thing about clean sheets. And so Keith is just like, all right, well, there's a washer and dryer right there. We can go on and clean these sheets. So we have Tess and we have Keith, and for some reason, for the life of me, I was thinking, like, okay, like, when is Keith's character going to turn into this villain? Because I'm so used to Bill being a villain in a story. Like, he rarely ever plays just the good guy. So I was thinking, I'm like, okay, when is he gonna go on and like, be the underhanded guy or the villain of the story? But he doesn't, weirdly enough. So Tess goes on to meet up with Keith at this table that they have at the B&B. And so Keith has asked Tess, like, well, hey, like, what are you, like, why did you rent out this for? And Tess is to go on and say that she is to be working on a movie, and that she, of course, was to go on and had done this movie in the past. And Keith is like, oh, yeah, like, I know that exact movie. And Tess is like, no, nobody's ever seen that film. And Keith is like, I have. And so Keith starts explaining the movie to Tess, and she's like, oh, wow, like, what a small world. So Keith is like, yeah, I love that film. And so we have Tess, who is going on and saying that she's going to doing this movie that is going to get some information from certain people, and Keith is to go on and say, like, well, hey, like, again, what a small world. Keith is to be one of those people that Tess should go on and should get information from. And Tess is like, really? And he's like, yeah, like, I own, like, a number of places. Like, Keith is to be this, like, rich, swanky guy. So anyways, we have Keith sharing a bottle of wine that somehow was found in this place. And so Keith is to really not want to, like, pop open this bottle of wine until both Keith and Tess can be in the room together and share this bottle of wine together. And plus, also, I'm sure Keith is to really, like, not want to just have a bottle of wine that's not already popped, so, like, Tess will get suspicious. Like, oh, are you trying to drug me? And Keith is like, no. So, we also have a moment where Tess is to go into the bedroom, and Tess is to find Keith's wallet. Tess ends up taking the picture of Keith's wallet, and then Tess ends up giving Keith's wallet back to him, just like, oh yeah, you forgot this. And Keith is like, oh, thank you. And I'm sure Keith is like, dude, I'm gonna be checking my wallet, like, if I get any car charges, like, yeah. So, but yeah, so they end up going to bed that night, and Tess is to wake up the next morning, and so Keith is to leave this note. But Keith was also telling Tess that they're going to go and try to get their money back tomorrow and get, like, a free night for what had happened here. So Tess and Keith, we find out Keith had left. Tess goes on to find this note that Keith is to say, it's like, well, hey, like, I had to go, like, I, of course, had business, hopefully everything goes well, like, break a leg, so on and so forth. So Tess makes her way to talk to a woman who is to be involved in this film, and we, of course, have Tess was to mention to this woman that she was to rent out a B&B, and the girl looks at her weird and is like, why? Like, you should be living, like, a lot better than that. And Tess is like, no, like, it was fine, and like, I was to live with somebody, but the girl's like, well, yeah, but, like, it's a really bad neighborhood. And Tess is like, no, everything's fine. Like, I'm okay with it. And they're just like, well, okay, all right. So it seems that the interview goes really well. Tess may be just easily up for this job. So Tess is to go on and look at the driver's license photo of Keith. And I'm like, oh, like Tess, it seems like some romance is brewing. It seems that Tess could go on and be looking at Keith and be like, I'm going to give me some of that Keith later on. So we have Tess that makes her way back to the place, and so we have Tess at some point who is just kind of making her way through this place, and come to find out, she goes down to this basement and is to realize that she is to lock herself in this basement. And so Tess is to realize she's stuck in this basement, so she just starts like organizing this basement, moving a bunch of things, hoping that she can stack a bunch of items near this window and try to hope that she can kind of like get her way out of this window. But then all of a sudden, we have Tess who realizes next to this pot is to be this odd rope. So Tess starts pulling and pulling as if she's a magician. Like, man, this rope is endless. And so all of a sudden, we have Tess realize that the further she pulls this rope, this door ends up opening. And Tess is like, okay, something's wrong here, obviously. So Tess just makes her way down this tunnel. Big mistake. And so Tess goes on to find this room with this bed, this camera, and this pot, or this bucket. And Tess is just like, oh my god. So Tess is to now like scramble and start smacking this window back in this basement because she's made it out of that weird goofy tunnel. And all of a sudden Keith is there like, oh, hey, yeah, hi. Like, why are you down there? And Tess is just like, hey, get me out of here. Like, I got locked down here. And Keith is just like, okay, well, like, if you push, I'll pull, and we'll try to get this window open and get you out of there. And so we turn around and have Tess and we have Keith. And so Keith is asking Tess, is like, well, what did you see? Like, explain it to me. And so Tess goes on and explains to Keith what he saw. And Keith is just like, well, like, you know what? I believe you, but, like, I want to see for myself. And, like, I obviously can't go on and go down here alone. So if you could just stay here for, like, 30 seconds. Just stay up here. And I'll go down there and I'll try and make my way through that place that you were looking at. And yeah, then we'll call the cops and do whatever you want. And so Keith ends up going down this tunnel, or going down the secret room tunnel and everything. And so Tess is kind of like waiting for Keith. It's like, Keith? Keith? Where you go to, buddy? So Tess is to take this chair and put it next to this door, and she makes her way down the secret way to this tunnel to look for Keith. And Keith is nowhere to be found. And then all of a sudden Tess to realize that there is another secret door I'm like, okay, why is there like a secret room and then there's a secret door that leads to more tunnel? I'm confused. So Tess is to go on now down another flight of stairs to continue to go down this weird, goofy hall, that is to be in darkness, but flashlight. And so Tess finally, after a plethora of screaming and kind of hearing Keith's voice somewhere in the background, like, "Ma, ma, ma," you can't really make it out. So Tess goes on and finally finds Keith, and like Tess is like holding on to him, like, "Hey, like why, like, didn't you make it back? Like, why are you here?" And Tess is like, "Hey, there's something else down here." And Tess is like, "What?" And so all of a sudden, we end up seeing this big, massive woman who is to grab Keith and like slam him against this wall repetitiously, and she ends up like crushing his skull with how much she's like just banging away. And I'm like, what the fuck? What's going on in this film? I'm confused. What? Since when do we all of a sudden have this big, huge woman? That's a huge bit. But then that's not all. We then all of a sudden transition to another character. And I was like, okay, whatever this is. So now we go into Justin Long's character, who is AJ. Justin Long's character, AJ, is to be this actor that is working on this pilot for a show, and everything seems to be going well for him temporarily. And then all of a sudden, we have AJ, who ends up getting a call from his agent, and come to find out that they're yanking the pilot. Like, they're suspending it temporarily. They're not going to go along with it temporarily. Because come to find out, one of the actresses that AJ had worked with is to go on and accuse AJ of taking advantage of her. And we have AJ who's like, wait a minute, like, what? Like, that girl's awful, and this and that, and like, how can she go on and accuse me of this? And AJ's like, well, I'm still gonna get the show, right? And they're like, yeah, about that. Like, the kind of the executives and everybody are kind of thinking that they're going to move forward with the show without you being in it regardless. And AJ's like, wow. So then AJ is to turn around to go to his kind of funds manager, or his like business manager, and like I think it's his like financial advisor. That's where I was going with there. So AJ ends up talking to his financial advisor, and we have his financial advisor telling AJ, yeah, because of this show, like within X number of days, like your funds are gonna quickly go to zero. Like, you're gonna be you're gonna be broke. So AJ is going on and like, well, like, but I could probably keep my house, right? I can probably keep my car. I could probably keep. And the financial advisor is like, yeah, no, like, you should probably sell all that off right now. And also, like I will no longer be your financial advisor either. And so AJ's like, wow. So all of a sudden now AJ is forced to leave town because he's going to have to liquidate a lot of his assets. And so his agent ends up calling AJ and is to find out that he's in Detroit. It's like, wait a minute, you're where? And AJ's like, yeah, like, I have to start selling off some things. And we have like AJ's agent who's like, well, yeah, but like you're out of town, and that doesn't look well for this case. And AJ's like, well, I'm not being charged with anything, am I? And the agent's like, well, no, but it doesn't look good for you to, like, to have left town the way you did. And AJ's like, hey, man, like, I have to go on and, like, I'm trying to, like, put out some fires here. So, like, whatever you're telling me, like, there's nothing I can do. So, AJ goes on to get a call from one of his friends, and he is to also call his parents that are kind of happy that AJ is back in town. So, AJ goes to this bar where, and you can really tell by now how much they set up this character compared to everyone else. To where it's like, Keith, nothing. like he just had this little thing, and Tess had this little thing, and then, but like AJ, man, no offense, but yeah, like they really made this character important, and so like justifyingly enough, because his story is a little bit more intriguing than the other two, in all honesty. So AJ goes to the bar with his friend to then have his friend ask AJ, it's like, well, hey man, like I know that, like, you kind of told me a little bit about this, but, like, really tell me, like, in your own words, like, what went down. And so the further and further that AJ starts talking about what had happened with him and this other woman, I think AJ starts to realize something. That AJ was to go on and say, it's like, well, yeah, like, when I was with this girl, like, we were just kind of working on lines, and, like, I was coming on really strong, and, like, I was really, like, trying to be relentless to get to this girl, and, like, we had his friend who was like, well, like, she said, like, no, right? Like, did she ever say, like, no to you about, like, what you and her were to try to do together? And AJ was like, well, like, maybe at first, but then, like, she ended up getting really into it. But then, when really playing it back into AJ's head, realizing that AJ had made possibly a massive mistake here, and AJ tries to go on and call this actress, and is to apologize, and to say, it's like, well, hey, like, possibly after kind of rethinking things, like, maybe I made a big mistake here, and so I want to call and say that I'm sorry, and then, like, if you want to, like, call me back, and we'll talk, and I'll apologize. So, AJ then turns around and is to wind up at this B&B. And so AJ winds up at this location to find out that there are already clothes there. Looks like already somebody's been living there. There might be squatters. So AJ calls these people immediately. It's like, well, hey, wait a minute. Like, the place you guys sent me to already has people in it. Like, what the is this? So now we have AJ that is looking for any possible little loophole thing or anything that AJ can turn around and either sue these people for, or to go after them for some kind of, like, false advertisement or something. So AJ then goes on and is to look and realize that they did not mention about this basement, and he's like, aha, like, I'm gonna get them for not having every bit of, like, square footage to have been on here on this thing. So we go on, and so AJ is to find out about this secret door, and it then is to find out that there is a lot more square footage for him to take this tape measuring and just like, yeah, like I'm definitely gonna give these guys a run for their money. And so we end up going on and telling another story about a guy named Frank. Frank, of course, is to go on to this grocery store, and he is to start to buy basically a home pregnancy kit, or a home delivery pregnancy kit, however you want to slice and dice and say that. So Frank is to go on and ask one of these customer service people, one of these people that work at the store, like, hey, yeah, like I'm looking for like a plastic mat, and like or I think he says like plastic bags or something like that, and he's looking for like diapers and all these other kinds of things. And so the woman is to go on and ask Frank. It's like, well, like this woman gave you like a list of stuff because they're gonna need a huge amount of stuff. And Frank was just like, ah. So this person ends up going on and start chucking all these items into this guy's cart because he's like, yeah, you're gonna need formula, you're gonna need this, you're gonna need all this stuff if you don't even have a lick of anything as far as baby stuff goes on. So this guy ends up going on and putting all this stuff in this car, and so he ends up driving on to find this woman. And the reason why I say that is because it seems that this woman, at some point, Frank, is possibly working on this woman. So Frank is to open up his trunk and get this onesie out, and he ends up pretending that he is to be this electrician. And so he comes in this woman's house and is to use the bathroom, use the sink, so on and so forth. She's going to see how things are set up. And then he leaves to, I'm assuming, abduct her later. So we have Frank, who ends up talking to one of his neighbors. And his neighbor is saying like, well, hey, Frank, just letting you know in the future we're moving, because this is a shady neighborhood. Because come to find out, we see like a number of homeless people that are within this neighborhood. And we even have a moment where when Tess is to try to make her way in to the house, we had a homeless man who almost attacks Tess, and she rushes into the house, and she ends up calling the police. And the police are just like, well, hey, yeah, like, we're busy, and, like, we can't send anybody out right now, like, but we'll kind of take your call, and so on and so forth. But we go on to have these two police officers who at some point finally do make their way to this place, but by then we have these cops who are just like, you know, I don't even believe that you live here. Like, I don't know if I can believe your story. They just start to try to, like, poke holes in every bit of it, because they're like, yeah, by the way you look and how, like, disheveled you look, like, you probably are just some homeless person that is trying to break into this house, and yeah, like, maybe you broke this window, not quite sure. So anyways, but, because really that story with Frank just kind of ends there. And so, come to find out, now we have AJ, who is at this house, and he is to finally further take this tape measuring thing to go on and find, of course, Tess. And Tess is to go on and say, it's like, hey, like, you should try to get out of here. Um, and like AJ is like, oh yeah, you must have been the person that was like squatting in my place, and Tess is like, no, like I lived here, and so on and so forth. So AJ and Tess are going on and having this argument, and all of a sudden we then have coming from the rafters of this place above, we all of a sudden see this hand coming out with this baby bottle, and Tess is explaining that this woman wants them to basically be her child and they have to act like it. And AJ's like, well, I'm not doing that. So Tess goes on and is to see this bottle and is to suck from it. And AJ completely refuses to do so. And so Tess ends up going on and grabbing AJ, dragging him to this room where she feeds him, let's just say. And so that, of course, has Tess get the F out of here. Just be like, yeah, whatever with that guy, I'm getting the out of here. So we have Tess that scrambles out of this place, breaks the window, and is to crawl out of there. And we immediately have this homeless person who's like, yeah, like you made it out, like good for you, and like you should get a way out. You should get way out of here because of like that house is like bad news. So all of a sudden we end up having these cops arrive, and they don't believe this woman's story, because Tess is to try to go on and to make it to, I think, this like gas station or something where she's like, hey, do you have a phone? And she calls the cops again, and they finally arrive. So Tess is to mention to these cops that she's been like stuck in this home for I don't know how long, held captive. And these police officers don't believe her, and they don't even go into the house. They just find some other call that is more important, and they leave. I'm like, yeah, of course that's what ends up happening. Because I remember, like, I had to go on, and like there was this whole like pet that was kind of stuck underneath this one thing at our store, and I didn't know who to call. And at some point, like the person that I thought was like animal control or something like that ended up just being some police officer who drove by, and I was like, yeah, that's not gonna help. But like for some goofy reason, for wherever I called, they're just like, yeah, well, like we can just send this out tonight. And I was like, okay, like I guess. And then like come to find out, the guy was like, well, yeah, if we end up taking any of these pets, we're just gonna kill them off. So yeah, like if you want to go on and if you want to yourself donate this like pet to like the Humane Society, you can go ahead and do that. And I'm like, I don't have the money for that. But so, like, but I tried to do the right thing. But they ended up just kind of like leaving because they're like, yeah, like we have a drunken public that we have to take care of. I'm like, okay, fine, like just whatever. So we have at one point where AJ is to get away from its mother, and so AJ, or from the mother that was there. And so AJ goes on to continue making his way through all these tunnels to find Frank, who is to have been there for a very long time. And so we kind of have to assume that Frank has gone on to have a number of different women who are to at some point have children. And so Frank is to possibly go on, and when he is to have a daughter from one of these kids, maybe he had kept that woman also. Like, so hence why we could probably understand like the long stretch of time that this guy looks vastly different than what he was in the beginning part of this movie. So AJ then is to go on and see this video of possibly what this guy was doing to these women, and he's like, oh my god. And so AJ is to then have Frank consistently be like pointing at something, and AJ's like, "What do you want? Do you want water? What do you want?" So AJ goes on and is to bring this whole thing next to Frank, and Frank instead is to grab this gun, and AJ's like, "Whoa, hey man, no, no, no." And Frank ends up shooting himself in the head because I guess since he's defenseless against this barbarian woman, uh, we have AJ who ends up taking the gun because he's like, well, hey, if I can get out of here, this is going to be the way for me to like shoot my way out. So Tess then finally realizes that like she has to go back for AJ. It's the right thing to do, and that also like what else does she have going on? So Tess makes her way back down there, having this door open again with this chair, and Tess makes her way back to find AJ, and AJ ends up shooting Tess by accident. And so both Tess and AJ, they are to now scramble and try to make it out of this place. And we do get to a point where Tess, come to find out, is to realize that the mother is to try to go after Tess. And we have a moment where Tess goes on and runs the mother down and like hope that she is to be killed off that way. But nope. So when Tess and AJ make their way out of here, they're scrambling. They find some homeless guy, and they're like, okay, we'll just go with this guy to find a place of safety. Maybe we can call the cops. They probably won't do anything. And so all of a sudden, the homeless guy is telling these guys, like, yeah, you need to get, like, out of here. Like, you need to get way out of here. And so Tess and AJ are asking this homeless man, it's like, well, hey, like, do you think that, like, this woman is going to come after us here? Like, do you think this place is safe? And the guy's like, yeah, I think that this place is safe. And then all of a sudden, the mother ends up taking this homeless man and killing him. I think she ends up, like, snapping his neck or something. And so now we just have Tess and we have AJ who are running for their lives. And so they just find this one thing that they just kind of run up these stairs, and then they realize there's nowhere to run to. And so all of a sudden, like, Tess is still trying to make it up these stairs, and AJ, like, gets this gun out, but then he starts fumbling it, and he drops it onto the ground. He's like, "Fa!" Like, the only line of defense that we had. So AJ then turns to Tess and is like, you know what? Like, I think what we're going to have to do here is I'm going to get away and you're going to slow her down. So AJ goes on and tosses Tess over the side, and we have the mother that goes on and tries to, like, protect her young and, like, breaks Tess's fall. And so when AJ makes it down there, grabs the gun, and he's just like, all right, I'm going to try to make it out of here now because I have this gun. So we have AJ that makes it back to Tess to find out that, yeah, after all, like, Tess is not exactly dead because the mother had broken her fall. So AJ is to grab Tess and like, hey, let's try to get out of here. Like I'm sorry. All of a sudden, AJ starts making up excuses to just be like, well, no, like, you were slipping and I was helping you and you fell and I'm going to save you now. Yeah, I'm going to save you because you're still alive. Like, I'm the good guy here. I'm the one who wins. Really taking from a Game Grumps line. No, I'm the guy who wins. Anyways, so AJ cannot go on and pick up Tess here, and so what ends up happening is we of course have the mother that goes on and is to put her fingers into or her thumbs into AJ's eyes, killing him, and then the mother is to go to Tess and consistently trying to pick her up because it's like, oh yeah, you were my child, you were the good one, da 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 da, and like the mother never talks in this movie. She's just Barbarian and she's like, whatever. So Tess, to finish this off, Tess goes on and is to shoot the mother in the face and kill the mother off finally. And that's just how the movie ends. And I was like, oh, okay, all right. Well, that was a movie. That was a thing to watch. That was a thing to do. So, with that said, let me know in the comments below how you felt about Barbarian, how you otherwise felt about me talking about this movie, whether you're like, okay, this movie's definitely not for me, or maybe I'll go on and check it out somewhere down the road when it becomes free on a streaming service, probably somewhere, right? I don't know if I would go on and really say, like, premium access this, but, like, if it could be reasonably cheap enough, then a lot of people would probably want to watch this movie regardless of how a lot of people are like, yeah, this movie's kind of weird. And then a lot of people going like, no, this movie was amazing. This movie was great. This movie... Because some people might just like this kind of film. Because it seems that this idea ends up kind of getting reused and recycled so often that it kind of doesn't feel unique. But you have certain characters that can make it interesting. But other than that, like, it's not exactly a good movie. So with that said, goodbye, everybody. Bye, everybody.